Hi creatives, welcome once again to yet another episode in this channel where we talk about photography and filmmaking tutorials and how to create great creative businesses. And today we have an exciting topic for you guys. We are talking about hard and soft light. But before we go on to the lesson, we have a great announcement to make. So over a period of time, we have been developing a series of webinars which we want to create and present to you, and we are ready with our first episode, and the topic is how to go through a great successful discovery session so that you can book all the clients that come to you as leads. So remember, discovery sessions are very important. It is at the discovery sessions where the client decides whether he will work or you or not. And so to make sure that you book all the clients, you need to do the discovery session the right way. And so I invite you guys to come and register for the webinar. It's as simple as you go down on the description below. The first link will lead you to a page on our website where you can register for the webinar, and all you need to do is put in your name, your email address, and your phone number, and you'll be able to register. Then afterwards, our team will send you a series of messages and emails, and finally send you a link to attend the webinar. So thank you very much. Hope to see you in the webinar. Now let's go straight to our lesson, and we are talking about hard light and soft light. Welcome. Welcome back. So before we start, it's good for us to understand what's the difference between hard light and soft light. So when you see a light, how do you differentiate that this is a hard light or a soft light? So let us start with the hard light. Now, a hard light is very well noticed by the distinctiveness of the shadow, the transition of the shadow to the highlights. So most of these images you see editorials, and they have very hard shadows, and the edge of the shadow is extremely distinctive and definite. That is what we call hard light. Now, soft light is different and opposite. So the edge of the shadow is usually very smooth and is usually gradual, and there's a gradual transition between the highlights and the shadows, or the shadows and the highlights. And so for us to see exactly what you're talking about, we have some practicals for us to see, and to see the difference between hard light and soft light. So let's go and see the difference between hard light and soft light. So we are here to understand the difference between hard light and soft light on the effect it has on a subject. So with me, I have my friend who is a prop or a model, and it's called Ignatius. Right now, Ignatius is being lit by a very wide dome. This white dome is the soft light, and I would want us to see the effect on his face. So you can see that the light, yes, there is some shadows, but the transition between the shadows and the highlights is a bit subtle and smooth, and it's gradual. And you can see how the light is warping around his face. It's not that harsh. And you can see, like, at the bottom of the nose, at the bottom of the chin, under the chin, under the mouth, under the eyes, you can see that the highlights and the shadows are not that different. There's no that definite transition. There's a gradual, smooth transition. So I want us to see the difference between this soft light and this small hard light. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this on, and then I'm going to switch this off. So now you can see the difference between that light and this light. Now you can see there is almost a split on his face. This side is dark and this side is bright. And you can see there is a distinctive cut of where the light is, and the shadow on this side is extremely dark, and you can tell there is a difference where the light is and where the shadow is, and that's the difference between hard light and soft light. So, and I will repeat and say that hard light is light that causes definite transitions, definite edge of the shadow towards the highlight, and the soft light has some smooth, gradual transition. So I know the question we may be asking is, what causes a hard light and what causes a soft light? And so this is the answer, that hard light and soft light is determined by the size of the light in relation to the subject. and we are going to demonstrate that in a minute. So the size of the light in relation to the subject. So when we were doing the difference between how to know whether it's a hard light and soft light, we talked about the size. And so let me demonstrate it easily. Now this is Halumba, and Halumba is our subject. In fact, his head is the subject. So if we want to get a soft light on his face, we need to use a very big light in relation to him. If we want a hard light on him, we have to use a small light in relation to his face to create a hard light. And that's why we used this small light, which is very small in relation to his face, so that this is what has created a hard light. However, so that you can get a soft light like the one we currently have, we have to use a big light in relation to him. So for us to understand this very clearly, we need to have two lights. We are going to do a demonstration with two lights that are similar in size but different subjects, so that we can be able to see the difference. So we have just said that one way to determine whether to get a hard light or a soft light is the size of the light in relation to the subject. So in this setup, I have two lights that are the same size, but the subjects are different sizes. So when I will take this example with my friend who is called Ignatius here. So the light that we are using is a small Yongnuo LED panel. But then compared to that light, compare that light to Ignatius. Ignatius is a big subject, so that light is small. That's why you can see that he has very definite shadows, because since the light is small in relation to Ignatius, then it has to have a hard light on him. And you can see the hard light by the definite shadows, by the hard shadows. The transition between the highlights and the shadows is extremely, extremely hard. It's very distinct. However, when you take the same light and put it on a small object, then that light, even if it is the same light, it becomes a soft light. Now let us take an example of this setup here. This is the same panel that was lighting Ignatius, but now it is lighting a very small object, which is some earpods. Now, this light in relation to these pods is extremely large. So on this pod, the same panel of light that was hard on Ignatius, it is very soft. And you can see that even my hand, there are no shadows, and the shadows are very minimal, and the shadows, the transition between the shadows and the highlights, or the highlights and the shadows, is extremely smooth. This is because even if it's the same light we used on Halumba, but in this setup, these pods and my hand, the light is very big compared to my hand and compared to these earpods. Compared to Ignatius, who is a big object, but the light is small, even if the lights are the same. So what do we want to understand from this is that hardness and softness of light is determined, number one, by the size of the light to the subject. And we have said, even if we had two same lights, like this Yongnuo and this Yongnuo, you can see that the shadows on Ignatius are hard shadows. And so the light becomes a hard light because the light is small compared to Halumba. However, the same light, when you bring it to a small object, becomes a soft light because now the light is big compared to the subject. So now, once you have understood that, there is something else you need to understand about light. If you take the same light and bring it closer to an object, it will have a softness on them, and if you take it away, it will have a hard light effect on them. So with that, let us do a practical on that. We want to test that the distance of the subject in relation to the light determines whether the light will be hard or soft. So right now, we are using my Godox dome, and this is usually my key light. But right now, this light is very close to Halumba or to Ignatius. So you can see now how the light is extremely soft on him, and it has warped around. Even if I bring it even closer, for example, so I have brought it even closer, and you can see how it is having a warping effect on his face. So it means that since the reason why he has a soft light on him is because the light is very close to him. So it becomes a very big giant light on his face. However, if we take the same light and push it further, then it will be like a spot of light on his face. So let us do that practically. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the same light and push it further. Then I'm going to add the power to compensate for the distance because of something we call the inverse square law. And we're going to talk about the inverse square law in another video. But you can see, so the image is still soft, yes, but it is harder. This is harder light compared to the previous one. Now you can see, like on the nose, now the shadow is a bit pronounced. You can see that the shadow on this side is a bit pronounced. You can see the shadow under his chin and under his mouth. One, because the same light that was soft closer to him, and when it was closer to him, it was a big giant light on his face. Now it has gone further, and so it becomes a smaller light on his face compared to how it was closer. So this whole practical is for us to understand that, number one, if you want to get a hard light and a soft light, you need to get, if you want to get a soft light, you need to get a light bigger in relation to the subject. If you want to get a hard light, you need to get a light that is smaller in relation to the subject. The second thing we have noticed is that for you to determine whether you want a hard and soft light is also dependent on the distance between the subject and the light. When the light is closer to the subject, the same light, it becomes a big giant light on the subject. But when you take it further, then the light becomes smaller in relation to the subject. And I will give you a very good example. The sun is a huge, in fact, the sun is bigger than the earth, and it is way far into the space. But the reason why the sun casts huge shadows, especially at noon, is because it becomes like a spot of light. And that's why it casts very hard shadows on us, because it is, yes, big, but then it is far away. If the same light is brought, if the same sun is brought very close to us, then it will be very, very soft on us. And that is why when there are clouds, we have soft light, because the clouds acts as a very big diffusion, and so the clouds create a big source of light. And that's why I always love shooting weddings when it's cloudy, because the light is soft and sweet, because the clouds are a huge source of light. But when there is no clouds and there is only the sun, even if the sun is big, but it is too far away, so it looks like a spot of light, so it becomes a hard light on us. And so the distance of the light to the subject determines whether the light will become hard or soft. So when the light is closer to the subject, it becomes a soft light. When it goes farther from the subject, it becomes a hard light. So after understanding that, now we need to understand, how can you make a light softer? How can you make a light harder? And we do that by changing modification. All you need to do is, to make a hard light soft, all you need to do is put a modification that will make that hard light a big soft of light. If you want a soft light to become a hard light, make sure that you remove the diffusion or remove a modification and put a modification that makes that light a spot of light. So now what you have done, the same light that had a huge dome that would cause a soft light on Ignatius, we have changed it and put a different modification that makes that light a hard light. The reason why it's a hard light is because the same kind of light is now a small light compared to Ignatius. And you can see now even the shadows are even more pronounced, very, very pronounced. And you can see the shadows, shadows are being cast are very hard and definite. So if we want to make that light a soft light, what do? We just look for modification. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take the same diffuser and put it in front so that we can create a huge light compared to what we have here. So here is the diffusion that I have, and what I'm going to do, the same light, I'm going to put a huge diffusion. Can you see the difference? Can you see the difference? So what's happening here? This is a small light compared to Halumba or to Ignatius. That's why it is casting hard shadows. But then when we put diffusion, it becomes a soft light. Why? Because now the light becomes bigger in comparison to his face. And that is the magic of hard light and soft light. So what do we need to do to make hard light soft? Is you need to increase the size of the light compared to the subject. What do we need to do to make a soft light hard? We just need to make sure that that light is small compared to the subject. So I hope you have understood, even if our setup was not that good, but you have understood the difference between a hard light and soft light. And you can see right now, even the shadows that are being cast on my hand on Halumba are extremely, extremely hard lights. You can see even the face. When I put my hands here, the shadows are very, very hard. That's because we are using a hard light. We are using a small light compared to Ignatius. But when we put diffusion, it becomes a soft light. Hope you have learned the difference between hard light and soft light. And as a recap, I have said there are two ways to get hard light or soft light. If you want a soft light, you have to make sure that your light is big compared to the subject. And if you want a hard light, you have to make sure that your light is small in relation to the subject. The other way to get a hard light and soft light is you have to make sure, if you want a soft light, that your light is very close to the subject so that it can be so big in relation to the subject. If you want a hard light, the same light that was soft on the subject when it was closed, you can take it further and it will become it could become a small source of light in comparison to the subject. And the analogy I have given is the sun. The sun is huge, bigger than the earth, but because it's very far away from us, that's why it has it normally casts very hard shadows on us, because yes, it's big, but it's very, very far. And so with that, hope you have learned about hard light and soft light. All you need to do is go do practicals. Hard light, people say that hard light is bad, but then there are scenarios and situations where hard light is suitable. For example, when you're doing editorials and fashions, that's how it becomes. However, soft light is more flattering. Soft light is a bit, it looks so nice and smooth on the skin, and that's why people love soft light. So to have the soft light, especially in your portrait sessions, get a dome like this one, put in a speed light or a strobe, and make sure that it's very close to the subject so that you can be able to get as much light as possible, or as much softening as possible. Thank you for listening to us. Hope that session was great and fun. And if you want to learn more about photography and everything about lighting, make sure that you subscribe to our channel. And all you need to do is go down and there's a red subscribe button, click on it. But that's not enough. Go to the red to the bell icon. Click on it so that you can get notifications each and every time we release a new video. Not forgetting the free webinar that is upcoming, talking about how to have a successful discovery sessions so that you can book all the clients that come to you. Make sure that you tune into that. All you need to do is register. Go to the first link in the description below, click on it. It will take you to a page where you're going to give your email address, your name and your phone number, and you'll have registered for the webinar. And until next time, I have been your host, Director Jonathan. And until next time, peace.